So let's talk about the controversy
Oh yeah.
because we don't get a lot of track beef, or in this case, track and field beef, which is part of the problem. Tara Davis Woodhall and her husband, Hunter Woodhall, but she was the one talking, if I remember correctly. She said, in response to Michael Johnson and his Grand Slam track league, which coincidentally does not include field.
hmm Grand
So
Slam
her
Track League.
thoughts were that if he says he can save track, first, track needs saving. Number two, that he can save track, but perhaps not be able to save the field part. Her response was, my sport doesn't need saving. We are doing just fine. And of course, I mean, I think a large part of it is Grand Slam track launching its inaugural season, trying to make a huge event out of, launching a professional track league based out of America for the most part, but just deciding, yeah, we're just not doing field at all. Which I guess means you got to go to the Diamond League if you're a jumper. Either that
Yeah.
or you can take your chances at Tom Jones. So, which I don't think pays.
They're
I
not
don't
getting
think they
paid
pay.
at Tom Jones. I don't think at all.
So, with that in mind, but what are your thoughts? Because there's a lot to react to. So I don't
Yeah.
even know where you go. Is it the Michael Johnson comment? Is it her comment? I mean, is it? I mean, where are we dealing
Ooh.
with it?
Well, I think there's like three maybe conversations. There's like, all right, Michael Johnson's comment, then you have Tara's comment, and then you have this idea of like track and field in its whatever space they kind of hold. So like initially, of course, Michael's comment with, I think I could save track, but I don't think I could save track and field or something like that. Um, so to me, I think obviously this wasn't phrased in the best way. I probably would have said something like, I don't know, I think I can help grow track, but not necessarily track and field. And maybe that's just me. I'm one person who doesn't think the track world is like, or track and field is dying, or like track and field. Maybe the track and field could be in a better place for sure. But I think that, track and field can grow off of some things that are generally working. There's some things that aren't as working, but that's just my opinion. But I think that I don't know. Johnson in general, he is a track, obviously one of the goats of track and field. So I can't on the surface hate him for saying that, yo, I think I could save track. I'm going to use not only my talents, but my experience, both on the track as well as off the track in commentary, in broadcasting, in, all the other things that he's done. I'm going to use that to be able to now invest in the sport and invest into something that I think is going to be able to help grow the sport. I think that makes sense. And he's adding something new, whether people like it, whether people don't like it, or they like half of it. I think that makes sense. But my problem is with the idea that like track needs saving. That I think, of course, is the big problem for me personally. And like problem, it's just like, I don't know. I would just again rephrase it differently. I just don't, I'm one who thinks track and field has a lot of good things that are working, but there is opportunity to be able to grow. And this is not to like again diminish. I know track history pretty well where like in the 90s and the 80s and even before then, track and field was way more popular than it is now. Stadiums were getting way more filled than they are now, but I understand that track and field and the world of sports are completely different. So that's like my kind of thoughts. I don't know what your thoughts on at least
Well,
Michael's comments are.
yeah. So I like how you said it because there are three separate conversations.
hmm
But I guess I come from the other side of the tracks where you could I understand why you would buffer back on track and field needs saving, but what I would say is to say it needs saving is to imply that it was ever thriving.
Mm,
Now, you're saying historically it might have been doing a little bit better in certain respects than
yeah.
it is now. And I think maybe that's maybe the conversation we're having in certain respects.
Mm,
But fundamentally, when we say professional track and field, just stumbled into it with an interview Carl Lewis, and it was like 5 years ago. And like it was some time. It wasn't like yesterday. And he was speaking about his perspective on the sport professionally and saying that, well, when you become a pro in track, What are you really saying? You're just saying I'll collect money.
Yeah.
Like that's all that it means to say I'm a pro. It's not like putting your name in the NBA draft
Yeah.
and like there's a whole ecosystem designed where being a pro means this. And then you end up with a world like the current world. To your point, track and field doesn't need saving. I'm gonna give you a few stats. One, I think it was like half of the athletes on Team USA who made the Olympic team make less than 15K a year from track and field,
Yeah. Yeah.
like from actual track and field.
Yep.
Now,
It's
some of
probably
them might
true.
be making more than that, clearly, from other endeavors.
Hmm.
Certainly not enough to make be lucrative. Again, we see the big names at the top because Americans love faces, and they even promote it with faces. That's the next thing. But like Noah Lyles, Sha'Carri, Sydney, like these are the
Of
faces.
course.
Look at
Of
the
course.
faces. Forget everybody else. But in terms of from a marketing standpoint, Gabby Thomas is on that list now.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess what I'm really getting at is when Alicia Johnson says I make way more money from her words, not mine, being cute than from track and field. She doesn't have a sponsor, but the real reason she doesn't have a sponsor, if you're asking me, isn't because nobody agreed to give her gear. It's because she realized that for her brand, it was a better idea for her to just wear whatever she want to wear in a creative way. Like for her brand, it made more sense. Like let that sink in. Because being a pro is more or less about a sponsorship deal for the most part, like Nike, Adidas, whatever. Like that's what it means
Yeah.
to be a pro. And
Yeah.
there's a lack of infrastructure, as me and you have discussed offline a whole bunch. And Kyra Jefferson said it. I go back to this quote when I heard it, it stuck, where she's like, "This is really an amateur sport with professional athletes in it." That's what it is. So, I mean, let's be honest that whether you like the word saving, the structure, the ecosystem could be better. And I'll even go back to what Carl said. I appreciate him putting some perspective from his seat because I'm coming from a different vantage point of like, I think bridging the gap between the casual fan and somebody who's really all up in the sport. Because to some degree, am all up in the sport, but I think
Hmm.
I also still sit on a different seat. And he's saying, okay, we're not going to do teams in different cities. That wouldn't work. Like the structure of the sport, the way we compete, it wouldn't really fit. But track clubs or like a club affiliate structure could work. The problem is you need to supplant what we're doing now. And then as we've said
Yeah.
before in the Grand Slam conversation to some degree, you've got to I think when we're talking with Kalen Walker, like
Yeah.
you have to get to a place where everybody knows what we're doing. Like fans need to turn it on and figure out what's happening in front of me and why does it matter. When you
Yeah.
move away from teams, you're now at the mercy of making me care about the individuals because the Cowboys are a brand when Dak Prescott is not the quarterback. Like they're still a brand. Now, I'm not trying to say this brand is as big as that brand. What I'm saying is the XFL, that brand, you're trying to tell me you can't create a brand that's at least that level with the best track and field athletes in the world? Or not name the XFL no more. The UFL. You're trying to tell me you can't
Yeah.
compete with that brand? Like you can compete with that. If we wanted to, we could figure out an ecosystem because we have so many talented athletes who are going to fall by the wayside, who are scrambling. All the unattached athletes who are showing up to Olympic trials in the finals,
Yeah.
who would have been
Yeah.
on Olympic teams for other nations but can't do it here. Like
Yeah.
that's I think where the lack of infrastructure. So it's sort of like when we say saving track, it's like we need something. And yes, we have the Diamond League, but the Diamond League is not an American thing. And it's
Yeah.
as a result, it's not designed to support our athletes well. So you can't really get mad at them for building a machine that made sense for what they're doing, which is essentially flying in talent to entertain their fans and then flying it back out.
No, it's true. It's true. And I think like there's because now this even brings back where track and field would have to just be so different, which is why on the surface, I do think like when Michael Johnson is saying, I think I can save track, I think from my vantage point, right? I think it's like a stepping stone where in 2025, Grand Slam track will go off. It's not going to completely reshift the landscape of track and field. We're still going to have the World Championships. We're still going to have the Olympics in a couple years, right? But it might be a stepping stone to revamp something and to create something new, Grand Slam track building up into something new. But I think, and to your point of like Diamond League, for the most part, is primarily in Europe, and we're flying in athletes. They're going to Europe and then they're flying back out to come train here in the United States. But having Grand Slam track in the United States, I think that is what Michael Johnson might be getting at. Okay, let me try and change up the structure of track and field in the United States. But I do think, to your point, where like track and field in general to be like saved or whatever would have to be completely restructured because what I was thinking about is okay, in the 90s, you had, with Carl Lewis specifically, you had Santa Monica Track Club, which was his track club. You had guys like Mike Marsh, you had guys like Steve Lewis, you had a couple other like high profile, all of them were like Olympic champions at one point in their career during that time. And they all trained in the same group. They were branded with Santa Monica Track Club. And and they had like the same agent, they were under the same coach. But that doesn't happen anymore here in the United States. So you can't even, in that model, okay, maybe track clubs could be, kind of going up against each other, have some leverage. But now just take Pure Athletics, which is Noah Lyles's, track
Yeah.
group. There you have Noah Lyles, you have Jareem Richards, who competes for, Trinidad and Tobago. You have a whole bunch of other athletes from different countries. You have, I think Wade Van Niekerk is in that club from South Africa, and they're all represented. Many of them are represented by like different agents, right? So you can't even have that leverage to say, okay, us as a team, we're going to go and compete together, at a meet and run this relay, or like try and like, build up this thing to go up against another track club. Like something like that can't even happen in the way that we have track and field structured now. And again, teams are probably not going to work. So that's why I do think, again, I don't know if like saving track is the greatest term, but I do think with Michael's comments, it's like, okay, cool. Let me start to build something to maybe start to revamp what track and field looks like. And again, I love field events, but I understand where Michael Johnson as an individual is coming from, even though I would love to see all these field events. I like all that.
Well, even well, we obviously have to address the whole track versus field part of the discussion, like the part of
Hmm.
the back and forth. But to go back in what you said, I'm trying to think about how the fans responded. Okay, the Olympics. That's the only thing that casual fans actually care about. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, for the most part,
Okay,
Olympics, a little
like
bit of world champs.
yeah, we you said a little bit. If the Olympics are a 10, what are the worlds?
I mean,
If the Olympics are a 10, what are the worlds? Like,
I
let's give it a
mean,
number. Is
oh
it a
man, oh
6?
man. I personally would give world champs a little bit higher, but obviously I'm realistic. Probably like a 7-ish. If we're talking about someone who does
To
not
the
know
track and
track.
field people or to the non-track? Do you think
To
non-track see
track
it as
to
a 7? Because they didn't even know it's a thing. I have friends who asked
That's
the
fair.
question when the Olympics came. Is like, what do these people do for the other 4 years? That's what they
No,
said.
it's true. It's
The
it's
same
actually
people
so
who
true.
watch the races
It's a good
and
point.
get
It's a good
hyped
point.
while watching said races. What are they doing? And then I send him a link to a Diamond League race, like, oh, Pro Track is the thing, which he did not respond to.
That's funny. That's funny.
But like, like that's the level of. So I mean, I think that's generous
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if we're
Probably,
having the real
yeah.
conversation about where we're starting negotiations from. And why do people care about the Olympics? They care because they care about who won. But then some of the kickback, let's go back to the 100, the men's 100, which I think it's safe to say is to the casual fan, arguably the most high profile event in the sport.
Oh yeah. I mean,
When
I think both
yeah,
to casuals and to diehard fans, it is the
okay.
most high profile.
Okay. So when Noah won, I was listening to a cut. I don't remember which newscaster it was, who was essentially trying to take a dig at him, saying, "Hey, he's saying I'm the fastest man in the world. Well, you barely won. What is she actually saying? This older lady who's a casual track fan at best, emphasis on
Mm,
at best. What she's saying is, my understanding of this sport is it's about running world record times
mm.
because that's how it's been promoted to her.
And
So she
this is
don't
a
even
casual person.
Yeah, like she don't even care about him winning anymore because
Wow.
he didn't run as fast as somebody else she saw run. She don't know nothing about wind factors. She don't know nothing about, weather conditions. She don't know nothing about training. She don't know none of that. All she know is there was a man and there was a time. And your time is not that time. So whatever we're doing must be the JV race.
That's
Like
crazy.
that's how she was talking about it in a public forum. So what I'm trying to highlight or bring out is yes, the sport does need, if you don't want to call it saving, I'll say this much. We definitely need some type of you call it surgery, you can call it, home renovation, extreme makeover, whatever you want to call it. But that's because I'm talking about what people are seeing from the outside. So
Yeah.
I think that whether we say teams, whether we think teams will work, I think we're having the wrong conversations every time we get back to these things.
Hmm.
Once we establish what we're doing right now ain't working, we can now move to a conversation about what will. As long as we
Yeah.
hold on to what we're doing right now is good. Like, hey, I'm not going to get hired by them, so I can say what I want to say. The World Championships. It's just the bootleg Olympics. That's all it is. As far as I'm concerned, if I created or someone created a functional professional league where winning there meant more than winning anywhere else, which I think Grand Slam is trying to get to eventually,
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
like from a titling perspective, from a I'm the fastest perspective, from a they see me and they recognize that I am the guy, I am the woman because of what I did on this stage perspective, where all the top athletes want to be there because when you're there and you win, it means something. If it's not the Olympics, then fine. Do the Olympics every 4 years. They can do the world if they want to. We can send whatever college kids we want. Ain't nobody care because they want to watch it now.
Hmm.
Like track fans watch it because we ain't had nothing else to watch. Like if you
Hmm.
are a track fan, you don't have choices. But
Yeah.
like, if you had choices, do you want to watch the World Championships with everybody representing their nation, regardless of who's in it, or do you want to watch, since Grand Slam is the thing? Let's say Grand Slam has all the fastest athletes in the world, which is what they're going for,
Yeah.
competing for a title.
I mean,
What are you turning
I'm
on?
obviously I'm turning on Grand Slam track. If it has literally all the fastest in the world, of
Yeah,
course, I'm going straight to that.
like the world is now, it's something else.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's something else, and that's okay. Like the
Yeah.
same way the
And yeah.
WNBA goes on break for the Olympics, Grand Slam can go on break for the Olympics when that year come around. Like,
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
you
And
you can
yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It is very much like, okay, building up to something that could, in theory, replace and or rival the world championships. That's the only way that something that I think track and field will start to like push into a direction that's like, okay, wow, this is not only different, but this is also something we want to see. Because obviously, for us track and field fans, we're going to be watching the world championships. We're going to be watching every single thing. But then once we see something actually competing with the world champs, it's like, oh, wait, okay, now I have not only more choice, but maybe all the best people are not at the world champs. They're at, Grand Slam track or whatever, you know, it becomes in a couple years or whatever it may be. But then, yeah, like you said, okay, take a break for the Olympics. Or if that looks like something different, maybe there is, like you said, some team structure that gets put in place and, athletes are competing on teams and they get to a finals or something like that, right? Depending on what it is. But I always do question. I wonder if one thing I always ask is like, does world athletics or like do any of these people who are trying to like start new things or like to innovate in different ways, do they have true data that says, okay, this has worked in some capacity, so now I'm producing this? And I maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, historically, track and field didn't have world championships until 1983. And then they added world championships because World or IAAF at the time, they said, okay, we athletes and fans are asking for more big championships similar to the Olympics. We can't wait 4 years. So they added world championships. But then I think in 1991, they started doing world championships instead of every 4 years like they started to do it every 2 years like they have now. Apparently that was based on data. Are Michael Johnson or even World Athletics? Are they like doing certain things based on certain on data from fans, from athletes, from broadcasters, from whoever to say, okay, this is exactly what is going to grow the sport, so we're going to actually implement this.
But,
We'll find out, but I don't know.
but see, I think the issue that World Athletics has, it's in the title world. Like
Well,
it's
yeah,
run
that's
by
the biggest thing.
somebody, but the issue is you're not selling to a specific market. The Diamond
Oh
League, as
yeah.
far as I'm concerned, is selling to a European market. Besides
Oh
for
yeah,
again, they
100%.
have meets in other
100%.
places, but that's who I think they're selling the product to. So as a result, they built a product, financial structures that made sense for them. People like to watch track and field if you can package it in a way they understand it. And again, if you're the Diamond League and I'm somebody in France or wherever else, the idea that you're going to fly in Noah Lyles to run the 100, it makes sense to me
Beautiful.
because I wasn't going to get to see him.
Yeah.
Like I was able to just run over to the University of Florida and watch him without paying a dime. That's my setup. But
And
like
then that's like
yours is
early
different.
season, not even, Europe, they get him in like peak form in the middle of July or in September or something. You're getting like, all right, April, he's kind of first race of the year breaking off rust or whatever.
Last before we close this, the field part, the whole track versus field part. Um, you tell me, how did the
Mm,
pros like what did the view you get from the ground from professional athletes when it comes to track athletes, which is still loaded because you've got the different event groups, you got your sprints, your hurdles, your distance, whatever, but like track athletes and field athletes, because again, it's not the same thing, jumpers, throwers, whoever. Like, is there a sense of we're all in this together, or does it generally feel like separate sports?
I think, I don't know. I think there's multiple levels in general, even for me, who is someone who is like, I am diehard like field events. My probably my favorite event in the sport out of any track or field is maybe the triple jump. So I like really appreciate all, but I do feel like it's very splintered in terms of like how events are viewed. Field events versus track events. I do think then there's another layer of like top athletes versus lower level athletes, right? So if you're talking about like a Noah Lyles, Sha'Carri Richardson, Gabby Thomas, they are on an upper tier that's like separate from every other track athlete, right?
Yeah.
Then all those other track athletes are more relatable to field event athletes, right? So that's when I say like there's, I mean, just in the
Um,
reality of things, right? Like that's the reality of things. But I do think, for the most part, athletes to athletes, all the athletes are like cordial. They're friends for the most part, and like they're cool and stuff. But when we're talking about okay, from a viewership's perspective, there is track, and then there's field, like separate, and then you have like outside of that, you have this upper echelon of athletes who are like even separate. Sha'Carri, Noah, Gabby, Sydney, et cetera, et cetera. They're like the stars who other athletes are just not on that level. Um,
I mean,
but I will say, um, I do obviously I have mixed feelings because I am very much like a field event person. I love field events and I am like gonna die on the hill that like field events need to be included as part of the sport. But I also acknowledge that like field events are just not as popular. Certain field events, so let's say that certain field events. I think certain athletes are popular, but then like certain field events are not as popular. And I also acknowledge with Michael Johnson, he's not World Athletics. Even though I would love to see field events as part of Grand Slam track, he's not World Athletics. He's not the governing body. He's a private entity coming into track and creating something. So again, I would love to see field events as part of Grand Slam track, but he's raising money. He's putting his own funds and his own stuff behind it. So I can't hate him for only doing a field event, a track thing. Just like I can't hate Ryan Krauser for only doing a field event thing, if that's what he chooses, right? If World Athletics, which they are in some capacities, like cutting field events, that's where I would get like a lot more riled up. But I don't know. I don't know what
I mean,
you,
I
yeah.
hear that, but see, so I'm gonna take it this way.
Hmm.
I don't know a lot about Tara Davis Woodhall, but I do know is that she was an amazing jumper at the college level, and that she's an amazing jumper on the world stage. I get those parts. Then I found out she had 1 million followers on Instagram.
Oh yeah, she's different.
And I was like, I don't think that has anything to do with long jump, or at least not mostly. Like part of it, yeah, maybe, but between her husband, who is a Paralympic, didn't he win the gold medal in the float?
Yep.
Yeah,
At the
so he's a
Paralympics. Yep.
Paralympic Paralympic gold medalist, and her. I think the combination of them two together, like the relationship between them, and like the way in which, again, you create a brand. Where I think when I think of her on one end, and then I think of wow, I'm sorry, I should know this name off head.
Wait, who are you thinking of?
Thea LaFond.
Oh yeah, Taylor Fawn from
Yeah,
Dominica,
like
triple jumper. Yep.
didn't she just win a gold medal at the Olympics?
Oh yeah.
So put one on one end and put one on the other. And I'm gonna do this in real time. I'm gonna do this in real time. Thea LaFond. What's she looking like on Instagram? Under 30K.
hmm
Under 30K. And I'm willing to bet a large percentage of that showed up more or less around Olympic zone. And on top of that, I see a GoFundMe, no cap.
She definitely doubled her followers, I think, after the Olympics.
But
And yeah, so I
but
feel
let
you.
that sink in.
Yep.
Olympic gold medalist, less than 30K, GoFundMe.
Yep.
So I understand what Tara is trying to say, but I would say you are the one in a million, almost
hmm
literally, like in terms of what she's been able to create as an ecosystem around her in the sport.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So when it comes to the field events, I mean, the real question is, I mean, yeah, how do you market it or expand the reach of it? Because and yeah, I don't have a bunch of amazing answers for you. The only one I have for you is comes from a team framework, which people like to keep shooting down. But I just keep reverting back to why did we care about Penn Relays so much? For the time that Penn Relays was up there, the reason why Bolt came to Penn Relays is because it mattered. And that's not a field event thing. That's a team thing. The idea it was called relays in the title. Ain't nobody care about no individual event and no Penn Relays. Like that's not what you come there for.
Yeah, it's
USA
true.
versus the world it was an event on the track and field calendar. It really
Yep.
mattered on that calendar. People looked forward to watching it. And that's why I think Bolt came because it was like, oh, that's a place to go. For my
Exactly.
career to say
Exactly.
I ran there, I had that experience, I was a part of it. And then you flip over to like kind of the other, piece of the discussion where field events made sense in a team framework because we're scoring points.
Yeah.
It all
Yeah.
it get all now because remember, as a fan, I need to know what we're doing. Like, what are we doing? And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
this is for 10 points. I get it now. Okay. I know why we're doing this because the team is trying to win. It all makes sense. And if you're telling me people don't care, then why is ESPN about to tell about the SEC indoor? Because they got a bunch of stuff they could put up there on ESPNU. Even if it don't get on ESPN2 live, that's fine. They're still going to put it on network.
Yeah.
Why? You think they're doing it just to make people happy? Because they petitioned for it? They're the population that wants to see the SEC indoor championship meet. Because when it comes to college track, it's basically professional level when you get there, especially in the sprinting events and the hurdles events and the jumping events. And apparently Parker Valby decided she wanted to be in the distance well. Like she wanted to see that we could be pro too. So
Yeah.
like they're the entertainment factor because teams were coming and saying, we're
Yeah.
going to battle. We want to win this title.
Yeah.
We're gonna jump whatever we got to jump. We're gonna run whatever we got to run. Whoever's got to run a relay for us and got to step up and put down a leg, you're gonna step up and put down a leg. Abby Steiner be running 4x4. She be running 4x1.
Everything.
Like
Yeah.
that's what it was.
And what's crazy is it even makes me
And he was
think
running
of
200s
yeah, yeah, true. Sydney ran
indoors.
everything. Sydney ran everything. 200s. I think she might have run 100 while she was at Kentucky. She ran everything. Like, but this made me think about someone like Jasmine Moore, who, when she was in the NCAA, she was maybe as an individual, she was one of the greatest NCAA athletes ever. But I don't know if it got highlighted as much, but because she was part of Florida, like she was one of those athletes where it's like, okay, we're as a team working together. Like Anna Hall was on the team at the same time, all that stuff. Now she went to the Olympic Games. She got double bronze in both the long jump and the triple jump, which has been done before by one other athlete from like Russia back in like 2004. And that athlete actually has some like skeptical questions around her. But essentially, she did something historical at this recent Olympics. No fanfare. And I think even now, like we just spoke about Thea Lafon, I think Jasmine might even have less followers than Thea.
Oh yeah,
And
20
Jasmine,
under yeah, 21, 20, near 22.
yeah,
I'm looking it up in real time.
yeah. So like to the point of
Not
okay,
that I care
someone
about that stuff for the record, for the comment section. It's
right?
just that apparently the rest of the world does.
They care. But someone who could do something historical in both events. She has two Olympic medals and from the United States, because some people may say, okay, Thea Lafon competes for Dominica, not a major country. Jasmine Moore has two Olympic medals and she's not getting fanfare like that. So it's just different. Like you said at the top, Tara Davis Woodhall is a different athlete. I put Tara in the realm of a Noah Lyles, of somebody else. I know many people who know who Tara Davis Woodhall is, not because of what she does on the track, right?
Yeah.
Because of all the other stuff that she does. And like I've spoken to Tara a ton of times, and she's a great person. Like she's a wonderful person, right? But I also acknowledge that like she is in a different bracket than
Oh yeah,
every other.
she
Yeah,
created a brand where if she quit track and field and burned all the medals, the followers would still be there, and she could
she's
convert
good.
that. She could be on, I don't know, HGTV for all we know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what she does, but I'm saying like she
Yeah,
could pop up in other places. She might be being like maybe like one of the reality TV,
yeah, yeah,
what is it? Like the host. Maybe
yeah,
she could
yeah.
be
Oh
like the
yeah,
host
yeah,
of a show on
yeah.
Netflix, and like
Exactly,
it would be a
exactly.
thing, and then people would be like, "Oh, I know her from Netflix." And they're like,
Exactly,
"Oh, she's an athlete,
exactly.
right? In what sport?" Like.
Yep, yep,
Like I really
exactly.
think that would be the discussion. So, but hey, saving track and field. Well, I don't know if it. We haven't agreed yet whether it needs to be saved, but we do know something needs to change.
Something needs to
So,
change. One day things might change. Michael Johnson, I personally think he's on taking steps towards that. Something new. It's always going to be good, but who knows what'll actually come into fruition with like the future of the sport. So, yeah. My name is Anderson from The Final Leg.
and I'm Coach Rob from SCA Track and Field, and thank you for watching this segment from the finish line.
If you want to know what's really going on at the high school and college level, be sure to subscribe to Coach Rob Track and Field.